Thank you. I'm Henry Baskin, your host for this edition of Due Process. We're going to be talking about lawyers. We have with us one of the most prominent lawyers in the city of Detroit. His name is Mayer Morganroth. We'll be coming back to him right after this.
Major funding for Due Process is provided by Meade Lexus of Southfield and Meade Lexus of Lakeside, offering a large selection of new and pre-owned certified premium vehicles.
Don't just reject convention. Drown it out. Introducing the all-new 2013 Lexus LS F-Sport, an entirely new pursuit.
And by WWJ News Radio 950, keeping you up to date with the latest news, traffic, weather, sports, and business information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Live, local, and committed to Michigan's future. News Radio 950, WWJ.
Thank you. I'm Henry Baskin, your host for this edition of Due Process. Today we have one of the best-known lawyers in the area and perhaps around the country. His name is Mike, to us, Morganroth. His name is Mayer Morganroth. And Mike, thank you for coming down.
My pleasure.
I appreciate your being here. As one of the best-known lawyers, and probably one of the most effective lawyers in the state of Michigan, let's start with when you first got into prominence with a client that was well-known. That would be an automaker.
Well, not quite. The first time I got into prominence is when I represented, in the beginning, some of the Teamsters, Rowan McMasters.
Oh, really?
Was the head of shall we say, organizing of members of Teamsters, was executive vice president. He's the one that, when Jimmy Hoffa went to prison, they wanted him to become president.
Did he take his place?
He declined.
Mm-hmm.
He told me to either end up dead or in prison if you were president, and that's how Fitzsimmons got in.
Oh, I see.
And Rowan McMasters is a gentleman whose farm they kept digging up, and even recently
looking for Jimmy Hoffa.
Looking for Jimmy.
Oh, wow.
But he wasn't involved, that I'm sure of.
Well, they're still digging, they're still looking, they're still accepting.
They're still digging, but not his farm anymore.
Yeah,
and Rowan died a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was on TV. They had helicopters flying over and
right.
all that. But after that, you represented an automaker.
Yes.
Who was?
John DeLorean, right.
Now, was DeLorean from Michigan, or did he have, I'm trying to think.
DeLorean was born in Detroit. He lived in Bloomfield Hills. Mm-hmm. When he was at General Motors. His family was from here too, and he then had offices in New York when he opened up the car company himself, and had a place in California too when he married California
Oh, he
ladies.
married some movie star's daughter, or something, Kelly something or other.
Yeah, first was Kelly and then was Christine, who I still talk to. Thermopolis is her name now. She married the head of ABC.
Oh, really? Well, when he was on television with some video that didn't look, it was sort of grainy looking, but it showed him in a hotel room accepting or giving a box of cash for drugs or something, allegedly.
Yes. I originally got called for him right after he was arrested when he was released on bail. And the way that came about was Ed Robinson, who had done a lot of limited partnerships with John, recommended he call me, and so did Tom Kimmerly, who was his general counsel. Tom was feeling that he might be the object of a grand jury, and he said that John should call me.
Was this after he produced the car in Ireland or Scotland, whatever?
Yes. He had produced the car in Ireland.
Okay.
After going around the world with different countries that wanted to produce it. And he got into that situation with Ireland, and Great Britain actually financed it. I won't go through all the things that occurred, but in any event,
it was a disaster, financial disaster.
Right. He had to raise a certain amount of money. The British government had given up on it, and they wanted, I think it was something like $25 million, and they would just walk away and actually eliminate the debt, which was 180-some million.
Well,
He then went and raised part of it in D.C. from an investor, then went out to California where he had a house, and the next door neighbor happened to have been somebody who was, shall we say, you want to call a snitch or whatever,
Right.
for the United States government, who then started talking to him about this situation, which ended up being
About
the
drugs.
narcotics in the motel.
was he convicted? Or
He was not. He was acquitted.
He was acquitted.
The jury was out for some 3 days. I quarterbacked that. Howard Weitzman tried that one, though, and I tried 43 after that for John.
Really? Well, whatever
And he was
became-
acquitted. The jury was out for several days. And at the end of the several days, they came back, and 3 of them wanted to acquit him on the basis of entrapment, and 9 on the basis he didn't do it. And they thought they had to be unanimous in the reason. They were for acquittal to start with.
Right.
And the judge told him, well, you don't have to be unanimous for the reason, just
Right.
unanimous on...
In the conclusion.
So they came and
Well,
acquitted him.
whatever happened to him after that?
After that, what happened, of course, the car company went under because he didn't raise the funds, beside the fact that they no longer wanted him involved in any way. But at that particular juncture, the car company, the DeLorean Motor Car Company, filed bankruptcy in Michigan. And I represented John through the bankruptcy. There was like $5 billion in claims against John. He ended up where I got him $68 million, and the $5 billion canceled out. He had a bunch of cases against him, 3 extraditions.
Well, is he still
I
around?
won them all.
Is he?
No, he died a few years ago,
Oh, he did.
January, a few years ago.
Well, Mike, you know, I've seen you a lot on television. You and your son representing people in the Kilpatrick matters and Kilpatrick and related matters. And I just wondered that some of the causes that lawyers take are not endorsed by the general public. Example, your client, Jack Kevorkian. You know, I know Jack. I knew Jack. He was quite a guy with a sparkle in his eye every time I'd see him. But his cause was he was castigated by people, and you took on the case. Did you represent him in Oakland County Circuit Court?
I did. In the cases that Jeffrey Feiger tried, I co-tried him with him.
Right.
But Jeffrey had brought me in, so I always stood in the background. And so Jeffrey would be on the camera, but I'd stay away from it. And after about 5.5 years, Jack really terminated Jeffrey, so therefore I felt I was terminated. And he got into that Thomas Yelp case where he was convicted. The last day of the trial, he got a hold of me and said, "You're taking over." And I said to him, "You know, it's a little late, Jack." But
Well, wasn't he representing himself at that time?
he was, but he had 2 standby lawyers
Oh, okay.
that sat there.
So
they
he-
actually started out representing him throughout the entire proceedings, and the trial too, when it was coming up. Jack had an argument with him the night before that caused him to represent himself.
Okay, but you're the lawyer that stayed with Jack, got him transferred from one prison to another,
Yes.
and kept the public informed about his cause and him. And were you there when he was released finally?
Oh, absolutely. When he was released, my son went with me too. I was there. Ruth Holmes, who was a jury consultant, went there. And Mike Wallace was on the bus, which was a funny story.
60 Minutes?
Yeah, Mike Wallace and I became pretty good friends, but we had a little bit of an argument over that one because I had arranged with the warden for us to walk out without all the publicity and only one camera
Right.
and one radio person and one newspaper person. Everybody else was beyond the fence, a mile away, and they were a tremendous amount of people. We arranged to go and get into the vehicle, drive out the back where nobody goes, only the warden,
But that
and then
didn't
not
happen.
be spotted. And Mike Wallace, when we get to the van, jumps out and hugs Jack. Well, you know, it was supposed to be private and everything else. It sort of was embarrassing that he jumps out. But then we went to Battle Creek where he did his interview again for 60 Minutes.
Okay, when was he released? How long ago was that?
Jack was released it would be in May 3 years ago.
Okay. So he was released and went back to, what, his apartment in Royal Oak? Or
That's
whatever?
correct. Well, actually, he didn't go back to the original apartment. I got him another apartment. First, he went to Ruth Holmes's house for a couple of months, the
Okay.
jury consultant,
Yeah.
while I searched for an apartment for him. And I got him an apartment in Royal Oak, a different one than he had before, right across from the farmer's market. And that's where he lived.
Is public perception of Jack and his cause changed since you got involved with him?
Well, let me say this. Unbeknownst to a lot of people, there was a poll taken while he was in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on a TV program then, and the poll was taken. There was 250-some thousand. 87% agreed with him.
87%.
And that's how it was. A great majority always agreed with him and felt it was appropriate. Some of the people who even agreed with him felt he might have been with the right message, but the wrong messenger because he was so outspoken.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I just quick questions about that, because Jack seemingly purposely videotaped himself and convicted himself.
Well, that's not really the way it came out. You know, as you know, having practiced law all these years and being in the limelight yourself, things aren't always the way they're presented. Jack actually videotaped every occurrence.
Oh, he did?
To show, but kept it, to just show the process and how he actually would have all the doctors' records of the other doctors, would consult with psychiatrists, would not do it unless he felt it was appropriate, and actually he would turn down 3 or 4 out of every 5.
Wow.
And then what happened was on that was a regular videotape that he took of each one that he did.
Right.
The reason why that was released to 60 Minutes wasn't because he was going to all of a sudden come out public. It was because they made a mistake at the Yelk residence.
Really?
And left out, when the authorities came, all the paperwork that showed Jack had.
Oh.
So it already was known by the police. It all was understood. And that's when he decided to go public with it. But he did not intend to originally.
When you represent someone, your job is to, within the law, make certain they're not guilty. You have to have a feeling about it. What is your feeling about what Jack was doing?
Every lawyer has a different feeling, I think, of how they represent and who they should represent.
Right.
Dershowitz and I are very close, and I lecture his class at Harvard a lot. And I also attend book fairs with him. Mm-hmm. And they'll always ask us, what is the line you draw in representing a client?
Right. That's what people always ask.
Alan Dershowitz says, I have no line.
Okay.
I said, of course you don't, Alan, because you only do appellate work. You don't have to intermix with the particular client.
That's right. Well,
And my situation is, if I can't make the jury or whoever is handling the matter, it could be a judge, feel that I feel for the client, I don't want to handle it. I don't want to.
So you
and
don't
that
want to-
happened with a very high profile, I won't name who it was.
So if you don't
and
believe,
I turned them down.
if you don't believe in their cause, you just don't want to handle it. We're going to take a break here.
Not just the cause.
It's the
It's not
person.
totally. I don't have to. It's in the person in that I feel I can do something for him and show the jury that
Okay.
I feel for that
Okay.
particular
That-
position we're taking.
Good point. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back in due process. I want to get an update on what's going on in Detroit and in Michigan vis-a-vis some of your clients. Take 1 second and be back.
Legal referrals and more information on this and other related topics are available on our website at www.dueprocess.tv. There you'll find information on today's program, helpful hints to legal issues, support materials, and lawyer referrals. You can also stream previous episodes of Due Process.
We're back on with Mike Morganroth. But Mike, I just want to ask you, let's bring an update to what's going on currently in the Detroit area. Can you name some of the people you represented and all of that on the state, the county level and the city level?
On the current situation,
Yeah.
because I've represented in the past, like Coleman Young or whatever.
No, I
but
mean currently.
on the current situation, originally my son and I represented virtually everybody. The police chief
Ella
Cummings,
Bullock
Kwame
Cummings. Where is she now? Is she?
I have no idea.
Okay.
And Kilpatrick, and Christine Beatty, and there was a police officer too. That
Christine Beatty just filed bankruptcy. Was that?
She did.
Case? She's not even in the area. Is she?
No, she lives in Atlanta with her 2 children.
Okay. Is she cleared of all
She is.
indictments, crimes, and?
She is, except
Okay.
for, of course, the one she pled on the perjury.
Right.
And
Did she serve time?
she served, I think, 45 days.
Okay. What about you and Kilpatrick? I was watching this case before Judge Groner,
Oh, yes.
and you were involved in that, were you not?
I was involved because I was representing Christine Beatty at that point. What happened was, when the criminal case came down, we had to choose because we had a conflict. You can't represent all these, as you know, you
Yeah.
can't represent different people in a criminal indictment because you're conflicted as to one against the other. You may not want one to testify against the other. You may,
Right.
you may have one that's guilty and one isn't. You just can't do it. So what happened was we had to select, and we selected Christine. Bill Moffat came in from Washington. I asked him to come in to represent Kwame. He did for a couple of months.
Right.
They broke it up at that point, and then Jim Thomas came in. Jim's a very good lawyer. And a
He's the
nice
attorney
guy.
now in the federal.
And he
case.
was early.
Right.
He was early also in the.
So
proceedings there.
you had a close relationship, not close, but you knew Kwame and his father and his mother, I assume.
Yes, I knew the mother better than them because originally she used to be at the Manoogian a lot, visiting Coleman Young.
So I'm not going to ask you about the party at the Manoogian, but I'm going to ask you
Okay.
if you can update me on the Kevorkians. People are claiming that they own some of his paintings, and the family says, or his sister says, that she owns the paintings, and I'm not sure how they got out of his hands.
Well, actually, what happened was when he went to prison, we had to decide what to do with those paintings because he had 18 other paintings that he did earlier, and they were put in storage in California and stolen.
And stolen?
Never seen again.
Wow.
So now he had another 17 paintings, and he wanted to figure what to do with them. So we decided at Ariana Gallery, which is a friend of his, that they would hold them for the time being, and I would arrange for the museum, Alma Museum in Boston, to have them on loan.
Is
and
that
that
what-
was the agreement said, they're on loan.
That's what he wanted?
Right.
Okay.
Well, to preserve him and save him. He's in prison where they're going to be.
Right.
His apartment was gone. He had no place. So we sent him to Alma with an agreement that they would return him, and the agreement could only be modified if in writing and signed by either Jack or myself.
And it wasn't.
It wasn't. And after many years, he gets out of prison, but he's still on probation, so to speak, parole.
Right.
And we're trying to decide what to do with him. And of course, Jack passes away. And I was with Jack when he passed away. And the discussion was about the paintings. And then after he passes away, Alma says it's theirs. He gave them to him.
Yeah, well,
That was the conflict.
Do they have great value?
Really great value. What we did, we had an auction set up for those to be auctioned and a lot of other things, including the Thanatron in New York. And of course, it blew up because the paintings didn't come. Alma said they were
Right.
theirs. But I recently resolved that. And the
did you get
museum kept
possession?
4 of them, and I got the rest of them. And now they're on their way to California for auctioning off.
For auction. And his heirs are, he has a sister or someone else?
He has a sister who disclaimed her interest in the estate. That's Flora. She lives in Germany.
Okay.
She was married to the ambassador, German ambassador, who died, and she lives there. She disclaimed her interest, and it's their niece, David Janis, who is the daughter or the sister you see in the movie.
Okay. Now, you were part of that movie, as I recall.
Yes, yes.
Well, HBO did the movie?
HBO did the movie, and the particular producer is Stephen Jones. He's doing also a movie on DeLorean, the DeLorean movie.
That'd be an interesting thing. Didn't Jack really dislike the misnomer of Dr. Death when they would call him?
Not at all.
Didn't bother him?
People never understood. See, that's, as you know, what happens is most people don't have the truth of what really something is.
Not the full
Dr.
truth.
Death had nothing to do with assistance.
Well, I understand that, but
You know where it came from? He was a pathologist. He invented the way to determine if somebody's dead, for sure.
really,
And if today you notice when a doctor wants to determine if somebody's dead, they use a light that goes into the eye. That was
Really?
Jack's invention. The particular light that's used and how it's used determines if the person really is dead, because a lot of people they think are dead are not dead really.
well, where did he practice pathology? Was he in this area?
Pontiac Osteopathic.
Okay, so
and in
did
the
he-
hospital.
So he testified at trials.
Oh
Was
yeah, and he
forensic?
also was the
Medical
doctor in California at a hospital there, and he also served in the United States Army
Did
Air
he
Force
ever-
as a
Did he ever confide in
doctor.
you and say, "Look, I'm trying to help people, and trying to make it legal for people to decide if they have a disease that is incurable and that they're suffering. I'm trying to force the issue." Was
There's
he,
no question. We've discussed it many times. In fact, we worked on a couple of programs, one in the Mideast, in the Emirates. When he died, they were going to go with that program, and he was going to help them with the program.
right?
There are countries that do allow assisted suicide. The Netherlands does,
Well, you mentioned at
and
the
there are
sta-
3 states here.
well, you mentioned at the beginning of the show that you had to believe in the cause
Right.
and in your client, and you believe that assisted suicide should
I
be
do.
allowed.
I do. However, I don't have to believe in the person's cause. I have to believe in the person and that they truly believe in the cause,
Right.
and that I can show a jury that I feel for the particular person, whether I agree with them or not, that they have a right to do what they're doing.
Well,
But when it comes to assisted suicide, yeah, I do agree with it, although I could never perform it. I hate to tell you, my father, my mother, they asked to, and I could never do that.
no, it's a
just couldn't do
difficult
it.
choice, and you see these powers of attorney, medical power of attorney, and things such as that. So, what are you working on now at the present time?
One of the things we're working on is a cell phone case, and my son's very much involved in that. That's for brain tumors, for radiation from cell
really?
phones. We've been working in that case for 11 years. We started it out in D.C., and then it was removed by the cell phone industry to
Yeah, well, I don't want to run out of time because I'm interested.
Maryland.
In this. So, is your position that brain tumors can be caused by the use of cell phones?
absolutely. And we've got experts from all over. We're in FRI hearings now in court. The courts have upheld the fact that they're not preempted,
Right.
the issue. And yes, it's definitely, we've got experts from all over the world, and we've got the evidence, and we feel very strong with it. And
Will this lawsuit be against all the cell phone manufacturers, carriers, and people such as Verizon and AT&T?
it's against the majority of them because it has to do with our clients
Well,
who had got them from those companies. But there's also what happened during the span of years. We were doing it ourselves, everything. And then once everything was upheld by the appellate courts,
right,
that we
the
had
lower-
the issues, and they could see that we do have proofs, now a lot of lawyers have come in.
Well, it's
and
like
there's
the-
a committee and all that kind
it's
of
like
stuff.
the
But we're
tobacco cases.
yeah.
But do you really
Well, a lot of
think-
the people in the cases were the tobacco lawyers and BP lawyers
Okay,
that have
the-
come in.
the class
but we're,
action
we're
people.
the lead people, Jeff and myself.
Well, Mike, do you really believe that? I guess I have to say the answer is yes. You do believe that the use of cell phones will ultimately assist in developing brain tumors.
I'm absolutely sure. I've seen a lot of the evidence, and some of it's by the guy that was employed by the cell phone industry to do the investigation, and then he came up with the fact in his committee and his people who investigated it that it did cause
When are we going to see some open litigation in this? Is
the
it
open
soon?
litigation's going on,
Where, and what state?
and it's in Washington, D.C.
Oh, so the discovery phase is going on now.
Well, discovery to an extent, but we're having a FRI hearing where we bring in all the experts to testify as to the
Convince the judge.
scientific evidence, and you have to convince a judge to get to that point even.
Right. I'm saying then they have to
And,
convince the judge. Well, we have 30 seconds left, and I just wanted to.
It is going on very intense. The only reason why it's not been publicized right now is we haven't really cooperated in it. It's out in D.C. a lot.
Right.
And
So,
Bill Proctor keeps calling me and says, I want to do something on the cell phone case. I say,
Well-
once we're into the Fry hearings,
well, Mike,
okay.
would you accept the fact that you are considered a lawyer's lawyer?
I've been told that.
Right, and I believe that. And I've been around probably as long as you have, and I really sincerely tell you that because you take on cases and I see the results. And I get the results.
Major funding for due process is provided by Meade Lexus of Southfield and Meade Lexus of Lakeside, offering a large selection of new and pre-owned certified premium vehicles.
Don't just reject convention. Drown it out. Introducing the all-new 2013 Lexus LS F Sport, an entirely new pursuit.
And by WWJ News Radio 950, keeping you up to date with the latest news, traffic, weather, sports, and business information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Live, local, and committed to Michigan's future. News Radio 950, WWJ.